So hey guys, it's me. I am rocking a sort of 80s, 90s vibe today. Uh, yeah, but yeah, Spice Girls, girl power. Anyway, go on quickly, see I already digress. We're going from James today, and we're going from verses 19 to 27 because last week we heard Ian and I think Mike in the adult talk about James, the first bit, about sin and temptation, and today we're going to be talking about James from 19 to 27, verses 19 to 27 in your girly Bibles. Sorry boys, it's 1451 in your Bibles. If you want to pick it up, it's just at the end here, and I'm just going to dig right into it straight away because let's not waste time. So the title, Hearing and Doing. Remember this, my dear brothers and sisters. Everyone must be quick to listen, but slow to speak and slow to become angry. Human anger does not achieve God's righteous purpose. So get rid of every filthy habit and all wicked conduct. Submit to God and accept the word that he plants in your hearts, which is able to save you. Do not deceive yourselves by just listening to his word. Instead, put it into practice. Whoever listens to the word but does not put it into practice is like a man who looks in a mirror and sees himself as he is. He takes a good look at himself and then he goes away and at once forgets what he looks like. But those who look closely into the perfect law that sets people free, that's key there, I'm going to come back to that bit, who keep on paying attention to it and do not simply listen and then forget it, but put it into practice, they will be blessed by God in what they do. Do any of you think you are religious? If you do not control your if you do not control your tongue, your religion is worthless and you are deceiving yourself. What God the Father considers to be pure and genuine religion is this: to take care of orphans and widows in their suffering and to keep oneself from being corrupted by the world. So to completely sum up that, it is basically saying apply God's words to your life. So that's a fancy word of basically just saying don't just listen to it, do it. So when we hear the rules or when we hear things that God is saying, we should be, as Christians, be doing those things, not just listening to them and thinking, yeah, they're truth, but actually I'm not living that life. So we're trying to get from that point of listening in our heads and hearing it and going, yeah, I know it all, but actually taking it into our heart and actually doing it. So let's just get real because it's easier. And actually, that is leading on from my point. I have a lot of flaws. Ian, Evie, everyone in my family, anyone who knows would say I have a lot of flaws. My main one is not being able to hold my tongue when I see fakeness. I don't deal with it well. I can't be around it. I'm just like, nah, I can't deal with you. If you're fake to me, I just can't deal with it. And I have been scarred with it in the past. I've seen a lot about it. Seen a lot about in my non-Christian life, and I've seen even more of it in my Christian life, and it doesn't stop just because you're a Christian. And this is kind of what James is getting at. He's not getting at it as in we should be fake. He's trying to call it out, actually. He's trying to say, like, listen, there is no point you just listening to God's words and not doing anything about it. You can listen to it all you want and it can go into your head and you can be like, yeah, I know every teaching that Jesus has ever told me. But if you are not actually following any of those things that he is asking you to do, it is worthless. He says, do not deceive yourself. And he says that actually God is just sort of like, I want real people. I don't want this fake people. I don't want fake people teaching other people about their fakeness and then teaching this whole on and ongoing thing about fake. He wants us to have real faith, and that isn't always in a nice neat little tidy package of a box, is it? Sometimes that is messy, sometimes that doesn't look like what we should be doing, but actually he's saying be real. Actually listen to what God is saying. This is for your own good. And I'm just going to sort of break it apart in my opinion, like what I've got from it. This is a few of my opinions in it, but also what James is saying. I have spent the majority of my life as a non-Christian, so this is no easy feat. When people say, like, don't just listen to the word, do it, that's all good and well, right? For me, this is my opinion, right? Okay, starting. It's all good and well saying it, but actually in reality that can be really, really difficult. And I'll tell you, there's like a few reasons why it could be from my perspective. I have gone, well, how old was I? 25 years old when I became a Christian. So I had most of my young adult and teenage years, my childhood was all non-Christian. I was raised in a non-Christian family. They had like, you know, good morals and all that, but I wouldn't say that they had like a teaching that was from Christian perspective, you know. I grew up where, you know, it was fine to drink, get drunk. Sex was like a natural progression in a relationship. It wasn't like a thing that we should reserve ourselves for. There was stuff like dealing with conflict. Like if it was that, it was more like just go on your gut instinct and just, you know, if someone hits you, you hit them back type thing. We were never that violent. That makes us sound like we're a really violent, thuggish family. We're not. My mum's very middle class and up herself in most ways, but it was kind of like I never really learned the basics of like a Christian upbringing. I would never have seen those things as actually being wrong. They were sort of okayed, and then I grew up in like school and it was all like the done thing. You'd hear it going round, so and so's with this person, so and so's had sex with this person, so and so's, you know, going out with this person, so and so's having a fight with this one, and it was all just like, it's normal life, isn't it? You know, this is just what normal people do. I was kind of getting to the point where I was like, oh, so what do you do with these boyfriends? You know, and I was trying to get to this point of like trying to fit in with everyone, and that's just what you do. It wasn't, you know, when people say like, oh, don't sin, don't do this. I didn't even know what the sins were, you know, I didn't know that it was sin. And I think that's one of the things that we start off as being a non-Christian to being a Christian is really that sort of bridge into being Christian is quite weird sometimes, because you're always like, oh, there's all these rules that you actually didn't think were wrong. So that's the start, you know. Before you even think I'm a sinner, you have to think, oh, these things are sin. So you have to go back before, you know. So my only experience of kind of Christian was from my friends, really, at the time. We'd have the odd assembly, but no one really listened to that. People with the little colouring paintboard things way over my head. by 16 I was doing things that was much different from so, you know, like it was non-relatable. So the only thing I could relate to was my friends and what they said. And even my friend was like, she always used to say, Jesus is coming soon, God loves you, and it was just like, okay, yeah, nice. And then that was pretty much it. And then I swung from here. I went to a youth club at her church that she dragged me to. And I was, well, I'd already been up to stuff, obviously, because I was 7 months pregnant-ish, with a bump. And I don't know, it was one of the biggest sort of, biggest things that happened in my life that turned me completely off church because of the way I was treated there. I was made to feel a bit like a leper. I'd get, you know, the odd looks like, and I heard whispers of a youth leader in one of those churches actually saying, you sure you should be hanging around with her? And this was back in the days when teenage pregnancy wasn't as like a big thing. It wasn't as accepted as it is now. And that really affected my faith. And my opinion of that was like, you are so fake. Like, you are supposed to be showing me that God is love. I knew that much, that God was, you know, supposed to be this person who loved everyone. God is love. That's all you heard. People, God loves you, God loves you. And I was like, well, you don't love me. Why are you saying that about me? And that is what I saw. And this is kind of where we're sort of starting to pick up with James. He's basically saying, you can say that you love God, but are you showing it to people? You know, at the end of what bit I was reading before, it says, the real religion is to take care of orphans and widows in their suffering and to keep oneself from being corrupted by the world. Now, okay, I wasn't an orphan or a widow, but I was in a time when I was really suffering, and actually I could have probably really needed some actual help, and actual biblical help, actually, because if I'd been taught it or shown it, I don't know, it might have changed some of the parts of my life, you know. But at that moment, all I thought was, you hypocrites, like you're being just, I don't want to be anywhere near this now. And this is, I think this has followed me in my passion now, that I never ever want to make someone feel like that in whatever state or form that you are in. Whatever you messes you have got yourself into, you can come to me and you can come to the other leaders in our church. Our church is such an open church compared to a lot of them. And I don't say that in a way to like berate churches, but there is a lot that has gone on that has affected my life, and I never ever want to make people feel like that, because God loves you. Okay, you might be going down the path that he doesn't want for you, but as we're going to try and explain, he puts in these rules, he puts in these guidelines, he puts in these things to protect us. It isn't to spoil our fun. I mean, I have gone through times in my life, and I still do at times, because I've had my life where I would say that I don't know how to do it without being frank. The biggest thing in my life has been sexual relationships. You know, I've used it as a thing to make me feel less insecure. So it was always tied up in that. I know I'm a bit rambling, I'm going here, there and everywhere. It's just because my mind is like that. But it's like, in my life, I think sex has led me down a path where I didn't even think it was going to lead me. I didn't really think of the big impact of it. But looking through my life, back through it, I can see that it has. You see, the thing is like when we're left to our own devices, when we're feeling down, when we're feeling suffering, or we're feeling insecure, if we're hating ourselves, we reach for things that are going to make us feel better. We don't really think about what God is saying to us all the time. We just go on our gut instincts. And like, okay, God created us, so you think our instincts at heart would be to follow what God is saying. But I think because we have lived in the world for so long, that influence is now corrupted what our instincts are. Our instincts are what the society has told us that is normal, and I think we just go along with what we think is normal rather than what God is saying. And basically that is what we're trying to get through to a little bit in some rambling way today. God's words were written for us as a letter to us. Like, okay, there's letters, there's bits throughout the Bible, but it's actual love letter from God, and he's writing it to be like, this is how I want you to live. And yeah, at the beginning, I very, very much am like this still. It can feel like he is just trying to spoil our fun. He is just trying to be a pain, or he's trying to be like difficult, and almost like his words become like a burden to my life. Like when I first became a Christian, I'd gone from not even knowing what sin was to then feeling all that sin, and then I had this massive like surge of guilt that had come over my life from all the things I'd done in my life, like the pregnancies, the sexual stuff, the drinking, the abortion, and stuff like that. And I had this rush of just whoosh, guilt and massive shame, massive feeling of broken, hurtness. I had massive mental health issues, like proper breakdowns, wanting to just not be here anymore. And that was after I became a Christian. So I can understand fully how hard it is to actually live by these words. Like, especially at the beginning, it can seem totally foreign. And actually it can either make you feel like I did, which was total guilt and whoosh, guilt in. But that was from me. That wasn't from God. But I was taking everything that I'd heard and gone, oh my goodness, this is me. I'm hideous and it's awful and I can never be forgiven for this. I felt like that, you know. It was almost like, how could I have done something like that and still be loved by this big God, you know? So that was after becoming a Christian, I had a massive mental breakdown, because I'd learned everything throughout my life, and then suddenly this had flipped completely, like massively, and I just didn't know how to deal with it. I was like, everything I've built my life on is all lies, basically. This is not how I should have been living, and I didn't know anything else. It was almost like I had to completely renew my life, and that is the point. God wants us to renew our life. He says that he gives us a new heart. You know, in James, where it says here, let me find it. submit to God and accept the word that he plants in your hearts. Like, he's planted that in your heart somewhere. And for me, I had that reaction to it, like, it was like rebelling. Not rebelling against it, it was like, I don't know how to deal with it because I've done all this stuff. And you might be feeling like that now. You might be going through life like, I know there's something on my shoulder being like, I know I should be doing this, but in the world this is a lot easier, and actually all the stuff that I have dealt with in my past is making this a lot easier to fall into. And you're never trying to, it's really difficult to get to this because it looks like such a high like mountain to climb to get anywhere near God, but it isn't. I'm going to cut that out. It is important to remember that God is not expecting the world from us. Okay, he sent his son to die on a cross for us because he knows we are not going to help ourselves. Basically, he knows we're going to mess up. Where James is telling us to, you know, put it into practice, it is definitely a thing that we need to do. We need to start doing. But it is a journey. It isn't like, it's a journey. I was thinking of Miley Cyrus, The Climb. It's the climb. But it is like that, you know. It's not how fast you get there. It's the climb. At the top of that mountain, you know, to be like Jesus. We're doing it a slow progress, and God will go, you know, he will help us as we do that. And like, yeah, I had that mental breakdown thing after becoming a Christian because I had never really dealt with any of the sin in my life, and I needed to deal with that. You know, I'm not saying that we should all have mental breakdowns when we become Christian, realise our sin and feel shame. That is not what I'm saying in the slightest. That was my reaction to it. Other people can react in lots of different ways, you know. Some people might just have not even dealt with their sin yet. They might not have thought, well, this is a sin that I need to deal with, you know. But for me, that was something that I had to deal with. And God was like saying, you know, yes, you do need to deal with it, but I've forgiven you now. You've repented from this. That is it. I remember it no more. Like, he chooses to not remember it, which is amazing, isn't it? It's just amazing. So we have to leave that there, and then I have to move forward, you know. But I do have to move forward into starting to live by what God is saying in his Bible. And that is difficult. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. But I think it is a big, massive, vital step. And I know, and I do feel for you. If you're in this place now, or if you still haven't quite got there and you still don't really get this whole, oh, why do I have to live by these rules? They just look like a burden to me. They look like they're just trying to make it boring. My life's boring. How am I going to do that in my school when everyone thinks I'm going to look stupid, or I'm going to look like you know, a fuddy-duddy? I know appearances are really like a big pull on us at the minute, you know. I know from Evie, like, she I don't want to sell her out because this is a bit mean, but she just wants to fit in. She doesn't want to be that person sticking out. And that is difficult in this world. We don't have to stick out and be like, oh, look at me, I'm so great now, I've got God in my life. It's not about it either. But don't just follow the crowd because you think it's normal. Get into these words, you know. God is trying to protect us. So as I've been saying, I think there's a sort of stage in my life. I've had experience of there's a stage of getting into the Bible, stages that I've gone through in my sort of faith journey. As I've been saying, to start with, I thought, flipping heck, what have I done? I had this massive big thing. And then I started thinking, and I still do at times, don't get me wrong, God's just trying to spoil my fun. You know, they feel like rules that I'm I haven't stuck to, and I'm still not sticking to. And they just feel like, you know, like being at school and you're like told all these rules you have to stick to, and you don't really understand why you have to stick to them. Because, you know, why do we have to wear uniforms? Why do we have to not run in the corridors or whatever? They're pretty basic, but you just think, oh, they're making up these rules for no reason. What's the point? I don't see any different. What's the point of these rules? Like, how is me not having sex actually a good thing before being married? How is not being envious of my neighbour's things, or wanting something that my friend has got? How is, you know, not committing adultery with someone, or, you know, cheating on your partner is a bad thing? Why is this such a big deal? Okay, yeah, it happens, but it's just humans, isn't it? We're all animals, or whatever you want to say, you know, which is what you'll hear a lot in society. You know, we're just animals and we're acting on our instincts. Well, yes, but are those instincts right? You know, have we been taught the wrong things? And that's what I'm saying. You know, at the beginning we think God's rules, they're all just boring, stuffy rules that we have to sort of stick to, and I don't really understand them, I don't really get it. And that's the first stage I think I went through a little bit, you know. And I think when I did start going into the Bible though, there's like a shift happens. And like the more you get into the Bible, the more you start reading the context behind all the rules. So it's not just like Moses in his 10 commandments and then Jesus saying about this and then Paul talking about how, you know, women be good wives and don't be, you know, immodest and flash your bits to all the men and tempt them and all this sort of stuff, which is what you see through the Bible a little bit. And you think, oh, there's all this stuff. But actually, as you read in all the little lines and how it all links up, you start seeing this like bigger picture happening. It's really difficult just to dig into your Bible for a little bit and then be like, oh, that seems a bit like, if you read the Old Testament without any kind of the context, sometimes I found it really difficult because a lot of it is quite hard on women. And for me, I was like, oh, this is really, how can a God be like this? Like, it's really. But when I picked apart through all the Bible, because I've read through the Bible a few times now, the more you read about it and the more you pray about it to God, the more you listen to podcasts about certain teachings in the Bible, the more you get like the context behind it and why God is asking this of us. You know, it's like, it becomes more like guidance to us then, rather than just those sort of stuffy rules. So we're moving on to that sort of, for me, I think, I keep going through these stages, but at the minute I think I'm seeing a bit more of like why God is saying it, and that you can actually see that he's wanting it for our protection rather than just to be boring, you know. I think the more we do that, the start we pull ourselves out of just the messes we're getting into, because if we do start sticking to the rules, God, it's like a momentum thing, you know. We start listening, God tells us more, we start listening more, and it just becomes like this momentum thing, and then it starts getting going, and you can sort of, you get into it and it keeps going. It's when we stop that we realise we sort of miss out on that bit, and then we sort of backslide a little bit into being, oh, it's just rules and boring stuff again. Think of it a bit like rock climbing, you know, you're always like trying to find the little footholds in the rock to try and pull yourself up, and if you've got like a sort of shallow one, then you just fall and you're like, oh, what am I doing, and you don't get very high. But the more you find, and then the more you start making the effort, and the more you start like climbing that thing, the higher up you get, and the more you get more of God's footholds on them, and it becomes like the top looks like a goal rather than this huge like, oh my gosh, look at this massive rock I've got to climb, this massive mountain I've got to climb. Once you started climbing, you're a bit like, oh yeah, but look where I was and look how far I've come now, you know. And it is just that, it's keeping going. Another thing, the more we get involved in church, the more involved we get in serving church, like say, you know, doing things, the more we are around people who are doing the same things. We're around people who have similar thoughts to us about God. You know, we see their lives and we see something that's good in their life, and it looks appealing to us, and we want to sort of copy what they're doing. You know, we want what they have, and we sort of, the more we get into these things, the more we sort of start getting ingrained into it all, and like it's actually easier to keep going in that sort of environment then. Once you're amongst all these groups, once you're in all these house groups and you're in youth groups, if you're in Bible study things, the more you have these people who are like around you, and you feel more included and involved in things. And when you're more included and involved, you want to learn more. You know, we don't feel like such like this massive hill to climb again. We're in it now, and we're getting somewhere, and we're looking back now and going, wow, look how far I have come, rather than just looking at the top and going, I'm never going to be like Jesus. This is just impossible. You know, we see the progress, and that's what we have to try and keep going on. So the next step that I sort of think I sort of go back and forth from is that we start to see God's words as God's blessings to us, actually. First, we've seen it as rules. It's a burden to us. Secondly, we start then getting involved more, and then we start to think, oh, maybe this is just a good, he's just trying to guide us into a better life. And then I think we get into this like sort of other stage where it becomes like a blessing to us, that it's actually a good thing that he's given us this discipline, that he's like telling us these things that we're supposed to be doing. It's for our own purpose, and it's actually to drive us into a bigger purpose. And when we are in those places, when we're doing things for God, when we are reading his like Bible a lot, or reading it daily, for example, or if you can't read stuff, listening to stuff. There's lots of audio on the Bible. You can actually have it read to you rather than just, you know, you reading it. The more we get into it, the more we can see God coming through for us. Like, we start to have experiences of God, I find. Throughout my life, I've seen it, you know, when I've gone, oh, I'm really nervous, I'm just going to do it though. And I've seen God come through for me. A lot of that is like public speaking. The Converge talk was a massive deal for me because it was like the biggest thing that I'd ever spoken to. I was so nervous and I thought, what the heck am I doing this for? Why would I do it? But because I've done it, I saw God come through for me. One, in my confidence, it has helped my confidence levels. It's made me less insecure about my stuff. It's actually given me a confidence in what I know about God and actually my faith and how far I've come. It's actually made me look back at my life and think, heck, man, where have you, look where you were and now where you are, and you never have thought you were speaking. You were like a quiet little mouse in school, you know. But we see that God comes through for us, and that is actually really filling. Like, we get filled up with that, and then we see we can trust God a bit more. Maybe what else can I do? You know, now I've had that Converge talk, I'm thinking, okay, I'm gonna do some little videos online, which I never thought I'd wanted to do, you know. Or I start doing my own little girly club thing when we finally get back, you know, and those sort of little things that, and then I see like some people come to faith, like when Shayla and Shauna came to faith in I think it was one of the first girls groups we had, and it was just like, wow, God, you are amazing. Like, you know, if you put yourself out there and you do feel like, oh, I'm gonna get judged if this goes wrong, I don't quite know what I'm doing, but like when something like that happens, you think, oh God, you know so much more than me, and why have I even been doubting it that you were right, and why am I not listening to your words more? Because if I listen to your words more, I am going to go further with you and for you, you know. And God has got something so amazing for us all planned out uniquely, you know. We don't have to follow everyone else's ways. We can do our own thing in God because he made us unique, and he has a purpose for us. Like I was saying in the Converge talk, we've got our callings, we've got our purposes, you know. And I think it's just like, this is a good analogy that I found in a book that I was reading, and it was basically like when a mum asks their daughter, I'm going to use Evie in this scenario, to go clean their room. Like, she's like, oh, I don't want to do that, it's horrible. And like, if you think about us reading about God's words and like actually applying ourselves to God's words, you think, oh gosh, yeah, but this is going to cost me stuff. I'm going to have to do some hard work here. I'm actually going to have to put some effort in. I don't want to be a lazy bum on the sofa and not really do anything and just have everything come to me. Well, that's not going to happen. Your room's not going to tidy itself. And God wants you to learn about him, you know, because then he knows once you start it, it's going to keep going. It's that momentum thing building up, you know. But anyway, get back to the, you know, like this kid doesn't want to tidy its room, but then, you know, and every minute of it is like, oh, I hate my life, I hate you. This is what Evie's like. Sorry, Evie. And you know, she's made the mess in the start. This is the biggest thing, you know, that child, us, we've made the mess of our life to start with, and then we're just being asked to clean house, basically. And that's basically what's God doing. He's like, you've made a mess up of your life. I didn't want you to do this. Now all you've got to do is read my words and clean up your life, you know, and I'm going to help you do this. This is not on your own. And it's like that with a child in their bedroom, you know, they're like, oh, I've made this mess, but I don't really want to tidy it up, but they keep doing it. And I always find with Evie, once she's moaned and moaned and moaned and moaned, and I'm the world's worst mother, she suddenly gets to this point where I'm like, have you finished tidying your room yet? She's been up there hours, what's she doing? And I find out that she's like taking everything out, and then she's finding like old memories and making a memory box out of all the stuff that she's found, or she's moving her room around because she's now got this sort of, but where it was once like horror and it was like, I don't want to hide in my room, now it's being like, oh, I found this new thing. Oh, these are all things I haven't seen for a while. Oh, I want to move my bed over to this corner and see what the different perspective of my bedroom's there. And then she takes more pride in it, and she's like building up. And then she's like, no, I want to do everything now. And it's like builds up. So once it was a real chore, suddenly now become like a real blessing in some ways. Like she's finding old toys and old memories that she used to have, you know. And I think that's just a really good analogy for what God is asking us to do by reading his words and just applying them to our life, you know, doing them, not just listening to them. Another point is when we start running for God, when we start doing stuff for God, before we keep progressing and reading and taking in, listening to his words, obeying his words, cleaning up our lives a little bit, the more it's basically, we become less focused on ourselves. And I think a lot of the problem is in our culture is that we are told to, you do you, YOLO, do what you want, be your own girl boss and all this sort of stuff, We're taught to be a bit selfish. But actually, when we have gotten into God, it's all about being there for other people. James is saying, real genuine religion is looking after the orphan and widows. And the thing he says there I find interesting, and I think I've heard it from another preacher that I like listening to, was that he's saying the widows and orphans because those widows and orphans can't do anything for them. He's saying help those people, and it's quite deliberate. It's a bit like you're helping the widows. Widows can't give you anything. They were like the outcasts, well, not outcasts, but they were sort of the ones who wouldn't be able to offer you. They were very poor often. They'd have been, as a woman, you'd have been left behind by your husband who died. You wouldn't have been left any jobs. Women were not seen as like the breadwinners of those days, And then orphans, being deserted by their parents, they're vulnerable people. They've got nothing to give back to you. And that's what he's trying to say, like, don't just do it to get like gratitude back or something that you can give them. Don't just be kind to people because you know that they're going to give something back to you. Be kind to those people who haven't got anything to give back to you, because that is when you're really like, God is really going to bless you for it. When you are forgetting about your own self and actually thinking, what can I do for other people? I think that's been a real revelation in my life. I think the stuff that I thought was a real burden in my life, all the sins that actually was bothering me, has now become this, it's almost like, and as I was saying at the very beginning when I was saying about finding freedom, there was, what does it say? But those who look closely into the perfect law that sets people free. And this is what God's doing in his words. He is not doing it to condemn us. He is not doing it to spoil our fun. He is not doing it because he just wants to do it for a laugh or whatever. He's doing it because it will set us free by listening to his guidance, listen to his words, doing his words, not just listening to them, doing them, serving in the church, serving in your neighborhoods, making like little food parcels for people, going to an old people's, well, not right now, but doing things for old people, sending letters to them, even putting rainbows on your windows and making kids smile as they walk past, and having the NHS clap. All these things are fixing our mind on someone else, not onto ourselves. And that is what God's ultimate purpose is. He wants us to set us free. And I think in my life, my experiences in my life, I thought, well, how can I use my past as anything that's going to be of use to God? But I don't know, I'm not trying to mention, but like it's I have had at least 2, 3, 4 people in my life that have been directly impacted by stuff that's happened in my life, not because of me, but there's things that I've been able to help people with because of the experiences I've had, especially around the abortion, especially around my sexual sins. I see it every day with people struggling in these sort of departments, and it has given me an absolute passion to try and help people. And that is what we're trying to find something in your past, find something that is going to motivate you into helping others. And that's basically what James is trying to say. Act on stuff, don't just hear it, do it, and it's going to be good because God is going to bless you. He says they will be blessed by God in what they do. It's that simple. It's not simple, I know. It's taken me 8 years to get to this point. So when you're feeling a bit like, oh, I'm a useless Christian, you are not. You are just on a journey. Okay, it doesn't matter where you are on that mountain. You're climbing that mountain, and look back and see how far you've come, because that is the biggest thing. And just listen to God. Please tune into him, because it will just set the ball moving. It will keep going.